The sun had just begun to set over tropic, Utah territory, when Jake Irving first laid eyes on the woman who would change his life forever, kneeling alone in the small whitewashed chapel at the edge of town, her head bowed in such earnest prayer that he felt like an intruder just standing in the doorway. Jake had come to the chapel out of desperation, his third visit that week, each time hoping that somehow God would hear his plea for relief from the crushing loneliness that had become his constant companion since taking over his father's cattle ranch 2 years earlier in 1883. At 28 years old, he had everything a man was supposed to want: land, livestock, a sturdy house, and enough money to live comfortably. What he did not have was someone to share it with, someone to make the empty rooms feel like home instead of just shelter. He stood frozen in the doorway, one dusty boot on the threshold, watching the young woman's lips move silently as she prayed. The evening light streaming through the simple glass windows caught the auburn highlights in her dark brown hair, which she had pinned up neatly beneath a modest bonnet. Her dress was plain but clean, a faded blue calico that had seen better days but was well mended. Something about the intensity of her prayer, the way her hands clasped together so tightly that her knuckles had gone white, spoke to him of a kindred loneliness. Jake cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her but feeling increasingly awkward about standing there watching her private moment with the Lord. The woman's eyes flew open, and she turned her head quickly, her face flushing with embarrassment at being discovered. "I apologize, miss," Jake said, removing his worn Stetson and holding it against his chest. "I did not mean to interrupt your prayers." "No, please," she said, rising gracefully from the kneeling bench and smoothing down her skirts. "I should not monopolize the Lord's house. I was just leaving." Her voice was soft and cultured, suggesting an education that seemed at odds with her threadbare clothing. As she moved toward the aisle, Jake got his first clear look at her face. She was perhaps 23 or 24, with delicate features that would have been pretty if not for the shadows of worry beneath her eyes, and the thinness of her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals. "Please do not leave on my account," Jake said quickly, stepping aside to let her pass if she wished but hoping she would stay. "I come here often and I have never seen you before. Are you new to Tropic?" The woman hesitated, her dark eyes studying him with a wariness that suggested she had learned to be cautious around strangers. "I arrived 2 days ago on the stage from Salt Lake City. My name is Sarah Greenfield." "Jake Irving," he replied, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her small hand in his, and he shook it gently, conscious of how rough his calloused palm must feel against her soft skin. "Welcome to Tropic, Miss Greenfield. Are you visiting family here?" A shadow passed over her face. "No, I have no family. I came seeking employment. I was told there might be opportunities for a schoolteacher here, as the town is growing." "We do need a teacher," Jake confirmed, his mind already racing ahead. "The last one left 6 months ago to get married and move to California. The children have been taught by whoever could spare the time since then, which is not often enough. But I thought the town council had already hired someone from back east." Sarah's face fell. "They had. I received a letter 2 weeks after I had already departed Salt Lake City, telling me the position had been filled. I came anyway, hoping there might be other work. I have been staying at the boarding house, but my funds are nearly exhausted." The desperation in her voice tugged at something deep in Jake's chest. He had known hardship himself, though never the kind of destitution that seemed to haunt this young woman's eyes. His father had left him the ranch free and clear, along with enough cattle to make a decent living. Sarah Greenfield, on the other hand, appeared to be utterly alone in the world with no safety net to catch her fall. "What brought you all the way out here to Utah territory?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. Surely there were teaching positions closer to Salt Lake City. Sarah glanced toward the altar, as if drawing strength from the simple wooden cross that hung there. I needed a fresh start, somewhere far away from my past. Salt Lake City was where the stagecoach brought me when I left Colorado. But it was too large, too full of people who asked too many questions. I heard Tropic was a small, quiet town where hardworking people minded their own business and judged a person by their character rather than their circumstances. There was a story there, Jake could tell, one that carried pain she was not ready to share with a stranger. He respected that. Everyone had a right to their private sorrows. That is mostly true about Tropic, he said with a slight smile. Though I would be lying if I said there were not a few busybodies who like to gossip, but most folks here are good people trying to make honest livings from difficult land. The sandstone cliffs are beautiful, but they do not make for easy farming. You are a farmer? Sarah asked, looking at his cattle-worn chaps and the rope calluses on his hands. Rancher, Jake corrected. My father established the Irving Ranch about 15 years ago. I run cattle mostly, some horses. The ranch is about 5 miles north of town, nestled up against the cliffs where there is good water and grazing. It sounds like a good life, Sarah said wistfully. It can be lonely, Jake admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. It is a lot of land for one man to work. I have 2 ranch hands who help with the cattle, but they have their own families in town. At the end of the day, I go home to an empty house. Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, understanding perhaps, or recognition of a shared loneliness. I understand that feeling, Mr. Irving. I have been alone for some time now. They stood in the quiet chapel, the evening shadows lengthening around them, and Jake felt something shift in his chest. This woman, this stranger, understood him in a way no one had in years. The loneliness he had been praying about suddenly seemed less like a permanent condition, and more like a problem that might have a solution standing right in front of him. Miss Greenfield, he said slowly, an idea forming that was either brilliant or completely mad, would you do me the honor of joining me for supper at the hotel dining room? It is the least I can do to welcome you properly to Tropic, and I would appreciate the company. Sarah looked uncertain. I should not impose, Mr. Irving. You came here to pray, and I have already interrupted that. You have not interrupted anything, Jake assured her. In fact, I believe you might be the answer to my prayers, though I am not quite sure how yet. Please say yes. The hotel serves a decent pot roast on Tuesdays, and it seems a shame to eat alone when there is pleasant company to be had. A tentative smile touched Sarah's lips, the first real warmth he had seen from her. Very well, Mr. Irving. I accept your invitation, though I must warn you that I am not accustomed to such kindness from strangers. I may not prove to be very good company. Let me be the judge of that, Jake said, offering her his arm. She took it hesitantly, and they walked together out of the chapel into the cooling evening air. Tropic's Main Street was quiet at this hour, most of the townsfolk already home for their suppers. The hotel sat at the center of town, a 2-story wooden structure that also housed the best restaurant for miles around. Jake held the door open for Sarah and nodded to the proprietor, a portly man named Henry Dalton, who had run the establishment for as long as Jake could remember. Evening, Jake, Henry called from behind the front desk. Table for 2, please, Henry, Jake replied, noticing how Sarah kept her eyes downcast as they crossed the lobby. She was trying to make herself invisible, he realized, a habit born of too many times being judged or dismissed. The dining room was half full, and Jake led Sarah to a corner table where they could speak with relative privacy. He pulled out her chair before taking his own seat, and when the waitress came, He ordered the pot roast for both of them along with coffee. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Greenfield," Jake said once they were alone. "What made you want to become a teacher?" Sarah folded her hands in her lap, considering her answer carefully. "My mother was a teacher before she married my father. She taught me to read when I was very young and instilled in me a love of learning. After she passed away when I was 12, I clung to books as a way to keep her memory alive. When I was old enough, I attended a normal school in Denver and earned my teaching certificate. I taught for 2 years in a small school outside the city." "What happened to make you leave?" Jake asked gently. Sarah's expression tightened. "The school was closed when the mining company that employed most of the town's men went bankrupt. The families moved away seeking work elsewhere, and there were no longer enough children to justify keeping a teacher. By then, my father had passed away as well, and I had no reason to stay in Colorado. I sold what little we had and bought a ticket west, hoping to find a new situation." "I am sorry for your losses," Jake said sincerely. "Losing both parents is hard, no matter how old you are." "Thank you," Sarah murmured. "Your parents, are they still living?" "My father passed away 2 years ago, thrown from a horse. It was sudden. My mother died when I was born, so I never knew her. My father raised me himself, taught me everything about running a ranch. I miss him every day." The waitress returned with their meals, and for a few minutes they ate in companionable silence. Jake watched Sarah try to eat slowly and politely, but he could tell she was hungry, truly hungry in a way that went beyond missing one meal. It made him angry to think of her going without food while staying at the boarding house, too proud to admit her destitution. "Miss Greenfield," he said, setting down his fork and leaning forward, "I would like to make you a proposition, and I hope you will hear me out before you refuse." Sarah looked up warily. "What kind of proposition?" "I need help at the ranch," Jake said, the plan crystallizing in his mind as he spoke. "Not just with the cattle work, but with the house. It has been neglected since my father died. I can cook basic meals, but the place needs a woman's touch. The garden has gone to weeds, clothes need proper mending, and honestly, I could use someone to help with the bookkeeping. My father always handled that, and I have been making a mess of the accounts. Mr. Irving, I appreciate the thought, but I cannot accept charity," Sarah said firmly. "I may be desperate, but I have my pride." "This is not charity," Jake insisted. "I genuinely need help and you genuinely need work. I can offer you room and board in the main house with your own bedroom plus wages. Nothing improper, of course. You would be my housekeeper, a respectable position. And there would be other benefits too." "What benefits?" Sarah asked suspiciously. "The ranch is isolated enough that you would have privacy and peace, time to think about what you want to do next. If you still want to teach, you could tutor any children who might come by, prepare lesson plans for when another teaching position opens up. And you would eat regular meals, get your strength back. You look like you have been through a hard time, Miss Greenfield. I am offering you a safe place to recover and a chance to earn money while you figure out your next step." Sarah's eyes had grown shiny with unshed tears. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Jake reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. "Because I know what it is like to feel alone in the world. Because I was in that chapel tonight praying for exactly this, though I did not realize it until I saw you. Maybe God sent you to Tropic for a reason, Miss Greenfield. Maybe we are supposed to help each other." "I do not know," Sarah whispered. "It seems too good to be true. In my experience, when something seems too good to be true, there is usually a catch. The only catch is that I am not an easy man to work for, not because I am cruel, but because I am particular about things. The ranch is my life, and I care about it deeply. I would expect you to take your responsibilities seriously. but I would treat you with respect and ensure you were safe and well provided for. You have my word on that, and in Tropic, the word of Jake Irving means something." Sarah studied his face for a long moment, and Jake tried to keep his expression open and honest, letting her see that he meant what he said. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Irving, I will accept your offer at least for a trial period. If either of us finds the arrangement unsuitable, we can part ways with no hard feelings." Relief washed over Jake so strongly that he felt almost dizzy. "Thank you, Miss Greenfield. You will not regret this, I promise you." They finished their meal discussing practical details. Sarah would collect her belongings from the boarding house the next morning, and Jake would pick her up at noon with the wagon. He would pay her $20 a month plus room and board, which was more than fair for housekeeping work. Sarah protested that it was too much, but Jake insisted. If she was going to help him with the books and possibly tutor ranch hands' children, she would earn every penny. When they stepped out of the hotel into the cool night air, Jake walked Sarah back to the boarding house, a respectable distance maintained between them. At the door, she turned to face him. "Mr. Irving, I want you to know that I will work hard for you. I will not take advantage of your kindness." "I know you will not," Jake said. "I am a pretty good judge of character, Miss Greenfield, and I can tell you are a woman of integrity. I am grateful you are giving this situation a chance." "Good night, then," Sarah said softly. "I will be ready at noon tomorrow." "Good night, Miss Greenfield. Sleep well." Jake watched until she had safely entered the boarding house before turning to walk back to where he had left his horse at the livery stable. His mind was racing with everything that had happened in the space of a single hour. He had gone to the chapel feeling hopeless and lonely, and he was leaving with a solution that felt like divine intervention. As he rode out of town toward the ranch under a sky full of stars, Jake found himself thanking God in a way he had not done since his father died. Sarah Greenfield was a gift. He was certain of it, though he was not quite sure yet what kind of gift she would turn out to be. He only knew that for the first time in 2 years, he was looking forward to going home in the morning because it would not be empty anymore. The ranch house looked different to Jake as he approached it in the pre-dawn light, seeing it through fresh eyes, imagining how it would appear to Sarah. The main structure was solid, built by his father with local sandstone and timber hauled from the mountains. It had 4 rooms downstairs, a large central room that served as kitchen and living area, a bedroom that had been his father's and was now his, a small office, and a pantry. Upstairs were 2 more bedrooms under the eaves, which had never been used. Sarah could have her choice of those, away from his room and with plenty of privacy. But as Jake looked around with a critical eye, he saw what 2 years of bachelor living had done to the place. Dust coated every surface. Dirty dishes were stacked in the wash basin. His clothes were draped over chairs. The floor needed sweeping, the windows needed washing, and he could not remember the last time he had properly made his bed. Sarah would take one look at this place and think he was a complete slob. Jake spent the morning in a frenzy of cleaning. He washed the dishes, swept the floors, and shook out the rugs. He changed the sheets on the beds upstairs and opened the windows to air out the rooms. He cleared his personal belongings out of the main room and shoved them in his bedroom, closing the door on the mess he did not have time to sort through. By the time he needed to hitch up the wagon and head to town, the house looked presentable, if not exactly spotless. Sarah was waiting on the porch of the boarding house when Jake arrived, her few belongings packed into a single battered trunk and a carpet bag. She was wearing the same dress as yesterday, and Jake made a mental note to make sure she had money to buy fabric for new clothes. A woman should have more than one decent dress. "Good afternoon, Miss Greenfield," Jake said, hopping down from the wagon seat. "I hope you slept well." "As well as could be expected," Sarah replied. "I confess I barely slept at all, wondering if I was making a terrible mistake." "And what did you decide?" Jake asked, hefting her trunk into the wagon bed. "That sometimes you have to take a chance on faith," Sarah said simply. "And that staying in that boarding house until my money ran out was a certain disaster, while going with you is only a possible one." Jake laughed, appreciating her honesty. "That is a fair assessment. I promise to do my best to make sure it is not a disaster." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, and they started the journey north toward the ranch. The road followed Tropic Creek through a landscape of red and white sandstone cliffs that glowed in the afternoon sun. Sarah seemed mesmerized by the scenery, her head turning to take in the dramatic rock formations. "It is beautiful here," she said. "I have never seen anything like these cliffs." "Wait until you see the ranch," Jake said proudly. "It sits in a little valley where the creek widens out. There is good grass and cottonwood trees. On summer evenings, the light on the cliffs is something special." As they drove, Jake pointed out landmarks and told her about the ranch. He ran about 200 head of cattle, mostly longhorns that could survive on the sparse desert vegetation. He had 20 horses, including some good mares he was hoping to breed. His 2 ranch hands, Tom and Pete, were brothers who had worked for his father. They came out from town each morning and went home each evening to their families. "You will meet them tomorrow," Jake said. "They are good men, hardworking and honest. They know I have hired you as a housekeeper and they will treat you with respect." "What about the rest of the town?" Sarah asked. "What will people think about me living at your ranch?" "Some people will gossip no matter what," Jake admitted. "But most folks will see it for what it is, a business arrangement. I will make sure to treat you properly at all times, and that will help. My reputation in town is solid, and that will protect yours as well." They arrived at the ranch in the late afternoon, and Jake was gratified to see Sarah's face light up when she caught her first glimpse of the house and the valley spread out before them. He helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk inside, showing her around the main floor before leading her upstairs. "You can have either room," Jake said, setting the trunk down. "They are both about the same size. The one on the right catches the morning sun, and the left one stays cooler in the summer." Sarah looked in both rooms, then chose the one on the right. "I have always been an early riser," she explained. "I like to see the sunrise." "A good quality in a ranch housekeeper," Jake said approvingly. "I will leave you to get settled. Come down whenever you are ready, and I will show you the rest of the property." Jake left her to unpack and headed back outside to unhitch the wagon and tend to the horses. He was grooming his big bay gelding when Sarah emerged from the house about 30 minutes later, having changed into an even more faded dress that was clearly her working clothes. "I am ready for that tour," she announced. Jake showed her the barn, the chicken coop, the root cellar, and the smokehouse. He pointed out where the garden had been and where the creek was shallow enough to cross easily. Sarah took everything in with an observant eye, asking intelligent questions about the ranch operations. "Where do you get your supplies?" she asked. "Town, mostly, though some things we order from Salt Lake City and they come by freight. We butcher our own cattle for meat, and I have been trying to keep the chickens laying, though I am not very good at it. We had a good vegetable garden when my father was alive, but I have not been able to keep up with it." "I can help with that," Sarah said. "My mother had a garden and I learned from her. It is a bit late in the season to plant much, but we could get some fall crops in if we work quickly." "I would be grateful for that," Jake said. "I am tired of eating mostly meat and biscuits." They walked back toward the house as the sun began to set, painting the cliffs in shades of orange and pink. Sarah stopped to watch, her expression soft with wonder. "You were right," she said quietly. "The light on the cliffs is something special." Standing beside her in the fading light, Jake felt a sense of rightness settle over him. Sarah Greenfield belonged here. He was certain of it. He did not understand why or how he knew, but he felt it deep in his bones. This woman, this stranger, was meant to be part of his life. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah proved herself to be everything Jake had hoped for and more. She rose with the sun each morning and had breakfast ready when he came in from the early chores. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, organized the pantry, mended his clothes, and even took over the bookkeeping after spending an evening going through the mess he had made of the accounts. "You have been underpaying yourself," she announced one evening, showing him the ledgers. "You forgot to record half the cattle you sold last spring, and you have not been tracking your expenses properly. Once I got everything straightened out, your finances look much better than you thought." "I told you I needed help with this," Jake said, impressed by her neat handwriting and careful calculations. "You have a head for numbers." "My father worked in banking before the drink took him," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "He taught me accounting when I was young before he became unreliable." "It is a useful skill." It was the first time she had mentioned her father's drinking, and Jake did not press for details. He was learning that Sarah shared pieces of her past in small doses, and he respected her need to control those revelations. Tom and Pete took to Sarah immediately. Charmed by her competence and grateful for the hearty lunches, she started packing for all of them to eat in the field. She treated them with friendly courtesy, never overstepping but also not acting subservient. Within a week, they were singing her praises to Jake. "Best thing that ever happened to this ranch, you hiring Miss Greenfield," Tom declared. "My Martha says the same thing. She came by yesterday to welcome Miss Greenfield properly, and they got along like old friends." That was another positive development. Martha, Tom's wife, had invited Sarah to attend church services with their family the next Sunday, which would go a long way toward establishing Sarah's respectability in town. Jake had offered to drive her himself, but Sarah insisted it would look better if she went with a family. "People will gossip less if they see me cultivating friendships with other women," she explained practically. "And I do want to meet more people in town. I cannot hide at the ranch forever." She was right, of course, and Jake admired her clear-eyed understanding of small-town social dynamics. But he found himself disappointed not to be the one sitting next to her in church, not to be publicly connected with her in that way. It was a strange realization that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Sarah had gone from being his housekeeper to being someone he actively looked forward to seeing every morning and missed when she retired to her room each evening. He found himself lingering over coffee after breakfast just to talk with her, and making excuses to come back to the house during the day to check if she needed anything. Sarah, for her part, seemed content with their arrangement but maintained a careful professional distance. She never touched him unnecessarily, never let conversations become too personal, never gave any indication that she saw him as anything other than her employer. It was exactly appropriate, exactly what it should be, and it was starting to drive Jake quietly mad. He did not know when exactly he had started falling in love with her. Maybe it was the first morning when he came in to find her singing softly to herself as she made biscuits, flour dusting her nose. Maybe it was when she spent an entire afternoon helping deliver a difficult calf, her sleeves rolled up and her face determined, never once complaining about the blood and mess. Maybe it was the evening he found her sitting on the porch watching the sunset with tears streaming down her face, and she had confessed that she was crying because she was happy, because for the first time in years, she felt safe and at peace. Whenever it had started, Jake knew with absolute certainty by the end of those first 2 weeks that he wanted to marry Sarah Greenfield. He wanted her to stay at the ranch not as his housekeeper, but as his wife, his partner, the woman who would stand beside him for the rest of his life. The question was whether she could ever feel the same way about him. He decided to take his dilemma to the one place he had always found clarity, the chapel in town. On a Thursday afternoon, claiming he had business to attend to, Jake rode into Tropic and made his way to the small white building where he had first seen Sarah. The chapel was empty, just as it had been that first evening, and Jake knelt in the same pew where he had knelt before. "Lord," he prayed silently, "I know I have already asked for so much, and you have given me more than I could have imagined when you brought Sarah into my life. But I am asking for more still. I am asking for the courage to tell her how I feel, and for her heart to be open to the possibility of loving me. I know I am not much, just a simple rancher, but I would devote my life to making her happy if she would have me. Please, Lord, guide me in this. Show me what to do." He stayed there for a long time, praying and thinking, until he felt a sense of peace settle over him. He would tell Sarah how he felt, and he would trust the outcome to God's will. If she rejected him, he would respect her decision and work to maintain the friendship and working relationship they had built. But if there was even a chance she might feel the same way, he had to take it. Jake returned to the ranch with his mind made up, but when he arrived, he found Sarah in a state of agitation. She was pacing in the yard, wringing her hands, and when she saw him, she rushed over. "Thank goodness you are back," she said urgently. "Jake, there is a man here to see you. He is waiting in the house. He says he is from a bank in Denver and he is asking questions about me. I do not know what to do." Jake's protective instincts kicked in immediately. "Stay here," he said firmly. "I will handle this." He strode into the house to find a thin, officious-looking man in a suit sitting at the kitchen table, looking thoroughly out of place in the rustic ranch house. The man stood when Jake entered, extending his hand. "Mr. Irving, I am Chester Kimball, an investigator for First Denver Bank. I am trying to locate a Miss Sarah Greenfield. I was told in town that she works for you." Jake did not shake the offered hand. "What business does a bank investigator have with Miss Greenfield?" "That is a private matter I can only discuss with her," Kimball said stiffly. "Miss Greenfield is under my protection," Jake said coldly. "If you have business with her, you can state it in front of me, or you can leave my property." Kimball's lips thinned. "Very well. Miss Greenfield's father, Thomas Greenfield, worked for our bank before his death. There were irregularities in his accounts, money that went missing. We have been investigating, and we have reason to believe Miss Greenfield may have information about where that money went." "Are you accusing her of theft?" Jake demanded, his voice dangerous. "Not necessarily," Kimball said carefully. "But we do need to question her. If she cooperates, there may not be any charges filed." Jake heard the door open behind him and knew, without turning, that Sarah had followed him inside despite his instructions. He could hear her ragged breathing, sense her fear. "Mr. Kimball," Sarah said, her voice shaking but determined, "I do not know anything about missing money. My father died deeply in debt, and I inherited nothing from him but his bad reputation. I sold everything we owned to pay off what I could and used the remainder to leave Colorado. I have been trying to start a new life." "So you say," Kimball replied. "But we have evidence that your father moved a substantial sum into an account under a woman's name just before his death. We believe that woman was you." "That is a lie," Sarah said hotly. "My father was a drunk and a gambler. By the time he died, he had nothing left. I certainly never received any money from him." Jake stepped between Sarah and the investigator. "Mr. Kimball, I think you have outstayed your welcome. Miss Greenfield has answered your questions. Unless you have some kind of warrant or legal authority to detain her, I suggest you leave." "This is not over," Kimball warned. "I will be making inquiries in town, and if I find any evidence that Miss Greenfield is hiding stolen money, I will return with the law." "You do that," Jake said, walking to the door and holding it open pointedly. "But you will do it off my property. Now." Kimball gathered his hat and left, throwing one last suspicious look at Sarah. Jake watched him ride away before turning to face her. Sarah had sunk into a chair, her face pale and her hands trembling. "I swear to you, Jake, I know nothing about any stolen money. My father was a disaster, yes, but I never benefited from whatever schemes he ran. I do not know what account that man was talking about." "I believe you," Jake said simply, sitting down across from her. "But I need you to tell me the whole truth, Sarah. What exactly happened with your father? Why did you run all the way to Utah Territory?" Sarah closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were filled with old pain. "My father was a good man once when my mother was alive, but after she died, he started drinking. He lost his position at the bank, but managed to find work as a clerk at a smaller institution. I thought he was doing better, but he was hiding his drinking from me. Then one day, about a year ago, he came home and told me we had to leave Denver immediately. He said he had made mistakes at work and people would be coming to ask questions. Before I could even pack properly, he had a heart attack. He died right there in our parlor." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, and Jake resisted the urge to reach for her hand. "What happened then?" "Men came, men from the bank. They searched our house, took everything of value. They said my father had been stealing from accounts, small amounts that added up over time. They questioned me for hours, but I genuinely knew nothing. I had no idea what he had been doing. Eventually they let me go, but everyone in town knew what had happened. People I had known my whole life treated me like a criminal. I could not find work, could not even keep our home. I sold everything to try to pay back what my father owed, and then I left." "Why did you not tell me this before?" Jake asked gently. "Because I was afraid," Sarah admitted. "Afraid you would judge me for my father's crimes, afraid you would send me away. This job, this place, it has been the first peace I have known in so long. I could not bear to lose it." Jake did move then, pulling his chair closer and taking her hands in his. "Sarah, look at me. You are not responsible for your father's actions. Whatever he did, whatever mistakes he made, they are his burden to bear, not yours. And I am not going to let some bank investigator chase you away from here. But what if he comes back with the law? What if they arrest me? Then we will fight it," Jake said firmly. "We will hire a lawyer, we will prove your innocence. You are not alone in this, Sarah. I am standing with you." "Why?" Sarah whispered. "Why would you do that for me?" This was the moment, Jake realized. He could play it safe, claim it was simple Christian charity or employer loyalty, or he could be brave and tell her the truth. "Because I have fallen in love with you," Jake said, his heart pounding. "I know it has only been 2 weeks, and I know you probably think I am crazy, but it is the truth. From the moment I saw you in that chapel, I felt something change in my life, and every day since then, I have fallen deeper. You are smart, capable, kind, and brave. You make me laugh, you make me think, and you make this house feel like a home. I do not want you here just as my housekeeper, Sarah. I want you here as my wife." Sarah stared at him in shock, her mouth slightly open. "Jake, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything right now," Jake said quickly, afraid he had ruined everything. "I know this is sudden, and I know you have a lot on your mind with this investigator, but I wanted you to know how I feel, and I wanted you to know that whatever happens, I am on your side. If you want time to think about it, that is fine. If you do not feel the same way, we can forget I said anything and go back to how things were. But I had to tell you the truth." Sarah pulled her hands free and stood up, walking to the window. Jake waited, barely breathing, watching her shoulders rise and fall as she struggled with her emotions. Finally, she turned back to face him. "Jake, you are a good man, a better man than I ever expected to meet, and I would be lying if I said I have not developed feelings for you as well. But I am not sure those feelings are love or if they are just gratitude for your kindness. And I am not sure I can be what you need. I am damaged, Jake. My father's crimes have marked me. I come with scandal and suspicion. You deserve someone better, someone who can stand beside you without bringing shame to your name." "You could never bring shame to my name," Jake said, standing and crossing to her. "Sarah, I do not care what your father did. I care about you, about the woman I have come to know. And if you are worried about the town gossip, do not be. Marrying you would silence the gossips far more effectively than any other arrangement. As my wife, you would have my name and my protection. No one would dare question you. Is that why you are proposing? To protect me?" Sarah asked, a hint of hurt in her voice. "No," Jake said emphatically. "I am proposing because I love you and I want to spend my life with you. The protection is just a bonus. Sarah, I have been lonely for so long, going through the motions of living but not really feeling alive. You changed that. You make me want to be better, do better, build something meaningful. I want children someday, a family to fill this ranch house. I want to grow old watching sunsets with you. I want all of it, and I want it with you." Fresh tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want it so much it scares me. But Jake, I need you to understand what you would be taking on. If that investigator is right, if there is money somewhere in my name that I do not know about, they could try to take it. They could accuse me of being complicit in my father's crimes. You could end up tangled in legal problems because of me. Then we will face them together," Jake said, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Sarah, I am asking you to marry me, knowing everything you have told me, knowing there might be problems ahead. I am going into this with my eyes open. The question is, do you trust me enough to take this chance? Do you think you could love me someday, even if you are not sure yet?" Sarah searched his face, and Jake let her see everything he felt, holding nothing back. Finally, she reached up and covered his hands with her own. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I will marry you, Jake Irving. I think I already do love you, but I am afraid to admit it, afraid to believe this is real. But I want it to be real. I want to build that life with you." Joy exploded in Jake's chest, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. She clung to him, and he could feel her trembling, whether from fear or happiness or both, he could not tell. He stroked her hair, murmuring reassurances. "It is real," he promised. "I am real, this is real, and we are going to make it work. I will go into town tomorrow and speak to Reverend Matthews about performing the ceremony. We can be married by this weekend if you are willing." Sarah pulled back to look at him. "So soon? Why wait?" Jake asked. "If you are concerned about propriety, getting married quickly solves that. And honestly, Sarah, now that you have agreed, I do not want to wait. I have been alone for so long, and I do not want to spend one more day than necessary without you as my wife." A real smile broke across Sarah's face, the first completely unguarded one he had seen from her. "All right then. This weekend. But Jake, I have nothing to wear, no wedding dress." "We will figure it out," Jake assured her. "Martha probably has something you can borrow, or we can buy fabric and she can help you sew something simple. It does not have to be fancy, Sarah. It just has to be us, making our promises before God." That night they sat up late making plans, and for the first time, Sarah talked freely about her hopes and dreams. She wanted children, at least 3 or 4. She wanted to establish a small school at the ranch for the children of ranch families in the area. She wanted to learn to ride horses properly and help more with the ranch work. She wanted to plant an orchard and keep bees. Jake listened, falling more in love with every word, marveling at how much life she had packed inside her despite all the hardships she had endured. He shared his own dreams, too, of expanding the ranch, of breeding better quality horses, of maybe getting involved in local politics to help shape the future of Tropic as it grew. "We will do all of it," Jake promised. "Together." The next morning, Jake rode into town to speak with Reverend Matthews, a kind older man who had known Jake's father. He explained the situation, leaving out the details about the bank investigator, but making it clear that he wanted to marry Sarah as soon as possible. "That is quite sudden, Jake," the Reverend observed mildly. "Are you certain about this? You have only known Miss Greenfield for 2 weeks." "I am more certain of this than I have been of anything in my life," Jake said firmly. "Reverend, you know I am not an impulsive man. I have thought this through. Sarah is the woman I want to spend my life with." The Reverend studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. If you are sure, I can perform the ceremony on Saturday afternoon. That will give you a few days to make arrangements and give the townspeople notice. I assume you will want witnesses. Tom and Martha, if they are willing," Jake said, "and Pete and his wife, but otherwise I would prefer to keep it small." "A wise choice," the Reverend agreed. "These things have a way of getting complicated when too many people are involved." Jake's next stop was Tom and Martha's house, where he found both of them home, Martha doing laundry while Tom mended some tack in the yard. When Jake told them his news, Martha let out a delighted shriek and threw her arms around him. "I knew it," she exclaimed. "I told Tom from the first day that you two were meant for each other." "Oh, Jake, I am so happy for you." Tom shook his hand with a grin. "Congratulations, boss. You are getting a good woman. Miss Sarah is special." "I know," Jake said. "That is why I am asking if you two would stand up with us on Saturday. Martha, I also need to ask if you might have a dress Sarah could borrow, or if you could help her make something simple. She does not have much in the way of nice clothes." "Of course," Martha said immediately. "I will ride out to the ranch this afternoon with my best dress and some fabric I have been saving. We will make sure she looks beautiful for her wedding day." True to her word, Martha arrived at the ranch that afternoon with an armload of supplies and spent the rest of the day with Sarah, measuring, cutting, and sewing. Jake stayed out of the house, working with Tom and Pete to give the women their privacy, but he could hear occasional laughter drifting out through the open windows. That evening, Martha pulled Jake aside before she left. "Jake, I want you to know that Sarah told me about the trouble in Denver and about that investigator. I want you to know that Tom and I are behind you both, whatever happens. If there is anything we can do to help, you just say the word." "Thank you, Martha," Jake said, touched by her loyalty. "That means more than you know." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Jake cleaned the house again, this time even more thoroughly. He slaughtered a pig and enlisted Pete's help in digging a proper barbecue pit, planning a small celebration meal for after the ceremony. He rode to the neighboring ranch to purchase a set of good china that the owner's wife was willing to part with, wanting Sarah to have nice things. Sarah seemed to glow with happiness, though Jake could see moments when worry would cloud her face. The investigator had not returned, but the threat of him hung over them like a dark cloud. Still, Sarah threw herself into preparing for the wedding, helping Martha finish the dress and making a special meal for Jake each evening. On Friday night, the night before the wedding, Jake found Sarah sitting on the porch in the twilight staring out at the cliffs. He sat down beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "Having second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "No," Sarah said immediately. "No second thoughts." "But I am scared, Jake. What if that man comes back? What if they try to take me away?" "They would have to go through me first," Jake said fiercely. Sarah, I meant what I said. You are mine now, or you will be tomorrow, and I protect what is mine. If Chester Kimball or anyone else from that bank tries to cause you trouble, they will have to prove their case in court, and I will hire the best lawyer in the territory to defend you. You cannot know that it will be all right, Sarah whispered. No, I cannot, Jake admitted. But I can promise that whatever happens, we will face it together. That is what marriage means, Sarah. It means you are never alone again. It means when storms come, there is someone standing beside you to weather them. Sarah turned to look at him, and even in the fading light he could see the love in her eyes. I do love you, Jake. I am sure of it now. I love your strength, your kindness, your steadiness. I love the way you make me feel safe. I love the life we are building together. I love you too, Jake said, and then he kissed her for the first time, a gentle kiss full of promise and hope. When they pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. Tomorrow, she said softly. Tomorrow I become Sarah Irving. Tomorrow, Jake agreed, you become my wife. Saturday dawned clear and bright, a perfect late summer day in Utah territory. Jake was up before the sun, too excited to sleep. He did his morning chores quickly, then came inside to bathe and dress in his best suit, a dark wool number he had not worn since his father's funeral. When he looked at himself in the small mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He looked happy, truly happy for the first time in years. Sarah was already gone, having left early with Martha to get ready at their house in town. It was traditional for the bride and groom not to see each other before the ceremony, and though Jake thought it was silly, he went along with it for Sarah's sake. Tom arrived at noon to ride into town with him. You ready for this, boss? He asked with a grin. More than ready, Jake said. Let's go get me married. The chapel was decorated simply with wildflowers that Martha had gathered, and there were perhaps a dozen people present, friends and neighbors who had heard about the wedding. Jake took his place at the front with Reverend Matthews, Tom standing beside him as his best man. Pete was there with his wife, and a few other ranch families that Jake had invited. Then the door opened, and Sarah stepped inside on Martha's arm, and Jake forgot how to breathe. She was wearing a dress of soft blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, with lace at the collar and cuffs that Martha had added. Her hair was pinned up with small white flowers woven through it, and she carried a simple bouquet of wildflowers. But it was her face that held Jake transfixed. She was radiant, glowing with joy and love, all the worry and fear erased by the happiness of this moment. Sarah walked down the short aisle toward him, and when she reached his side, Jake took her hand, marveling at how right it felt. Reverend Matthews began the ceremony, speaking about love and commitment and the sacred covenant of marriage, but Jake barely heard the words. All his attention was on Sarah, on the feel of her hand in his, on the love shining in her eyes. When it came time for the vows, Jake spoke as clearly and firmly. I, Jake Irving, take you, Sarah Greenfield, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. Sarah's voice shook slightly with emotion as she repeated her own vows, but her gaze never wavered from his face. I, Sarah Greenfield, take you, Jake Irving, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, and Jake kissed his bride to the applause of their small gathering of friends. It was perfect, simple and heartfelt and real. After the ceremony, everyone made their way back to the ranch for the celebration meal. Jake had arranged for a pig roast, and Martha and some of the other women had brought side dishes. They ate and talked and laughed as the sun began to set, painting the cliffs in those spectacular colors that Jake loved. As the guests began to leave, each one offering congratulations and well wishes, Jake felt profound gratitude. This was his community, these people who had come out to support him and Sarah, who had welcomed her without judgment. This was what it meant to belong somewhere. Finally, it was just Jake and Sarah, standing in the yard of their ranch house, now officially husband and wife. Sarah had changed out of her wedding dress into a simple cotton gown, her hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked young and uncertain, and Jake realized she was probably nervous about the wedding night. "Sarah," he said gently, taking her hands, "I want you to know that there is no pressure tonight. We have the rest of our lives together. We can take things as slowly as you need." Relief and love flooded Sarah's face. "Have I mentioned lately how much I love you?" "Not in the last hour," Jake said with a smile. "I am due for a reminder." "I love you, Jake Irving," Sarah said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "And I am not nervous. I trust you completely. I want to be your wife in every way." Jake swept her up into his arms, making her laugh, and carried her into the house, kicking the door shut behind them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever troubles might come, tonight was about joy and love and the beginning of their new life together. The next few weeks settled into a blissful routine. Jake had never been happier, waking each morning with Sarah beside him, working the ranch during the day knowing he would come home to her in the evening. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's quirks and habits. Sarah sang while she worked, Jake discovered, old hymns and folk songs in a clear, sweet voice. Jake was prone to brooding when problems arose, and Sarah had learned to draw him out with gentle questions and patient listening. They worked together on the ranch, Sarah proving to be a natural with the animals. She took over the care of the chickens entirely, and soon they were producing more eggs than Jake had seen in years. She helped him with a difficult mare that was refusing to be ridden, approaching the animal with such patience and gentleness that within a week, the mare was eating out of her hand. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunsets, Sarah tucked under Jake's arm, talking about their plans for the future. They wanted to add onto the house, build a proper bedroom downstairs so the upstairs could be reserved for children. They wanted to expand the garden, maybe plant some fruit trees. Sarah wanted to start a library of books that children in the area could borrow from, slowly building up a collection. A month after the wedding, Martha came to visit with news. "That investigator left town," she reported. "My brother works at the hotel, and he said the man checked out 3 days ago, muttering about wild goose chases and wasted time." Sarah visibly relaxed, the tension she had been carrying in her shoulders easing. "Do you think he is gone for good?" "Hard to say," Martha admitted. "But at least he left without causing any trouble. And now that you are married to Jake, you have even more protection. They would have a harder time trying to pursue any legal action against you." Jake pulled Sarah close. "We are not going to worry about it. If they had any real evidence, they would have acted by now. They were fishing and they did not catch anything." As the weeks turned into months, Jake's confidence proved justified. No one from Denver came looking for Sarah, and gradually, the worry faded from her eyes entirely. She threw herself into life on the ranch with complete joy, making it truly their home. By the time winter arrived, settling a blanket of snow over the red rocks and making the ranch work harder, Sarah had other news to share. She waited until they were sitting by the fire one evening, Jake reading the newspaper that had come in from Salt Lake City, before speaking. "Jake, I need to tell you something." Something in her tone made him set the paper aside immediately. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," Sarah said, a smile playing at her lips. More than fine, actually. Jake, I am with child. We are going to have a baby. Jake stared at her for a moment, the words not quite registering. Then joy exploded through him so powerfully he felt dizzy. A baby, Sarah, are you certain? As certain as I can be, Sarah said. I have missed my monthly courses for 2 months now, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. Martha confirmed it yesterday when she was here. She has had 5 children, so she knows the signs. We are going to have a baby, Jake. Jake crossed to where she sat and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. This is the best news I have ever received. Sarah, you have made me the happiest man alive. I am happy too, Sarah said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never thought I would have this, Jake. A husband who loves me, a home, a child on the way. It is more than I ever dared to dream. You deserve all of it and more, Jake said fiercely. And I am going to make sure you have everything you need. We will get Dr. Harrison from Panguitch to come check on you regularly. We will make sure you rest and eat well. And I am going to build you the best cradle any baby ever had. True to his word, Jake spent the winter months preparing for the baby's arrival. He built a beautiful cradle from pine, sanding it until it was smooth as glass. Sarah sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her face glowing with contentment. They argued playfully about names, Jake lobbying for Jacob Jr. if it was a boy, Sarah insisting they should honor his father and name a son Thomas. As Sarah's belly grew, Jake found new things to love about his wife. The way she would rest her hands on her stomach and talk to the baby, telling it about the ranch and how much they would love it. The way she would laugh when the baby kicked, grabbing Jake's hand so he could feel it too. The fierce protectiveness that came over her face when discussing the baby's future. Determination that their child would grow up secure and loved. Spring came early in 1884, the snow melting to reveal a landscape refreshed and green. Sarah was due to give birth in late May, and as the time approached, Jake found himself both excited and terrified. What if something went wrong? What if he lost Sarah or the baby? He tried to hide his fear, but Sarah saw right through him. Nothing is going to go wrong, she reassured him one evening. Women have babies all the time, Jake. I am healthy and strong, and Dr. Harrison says everything looks good. You need to have faith. I do have faith, Jake said. I just cannot bear the thought of anything happening to you. You are my whole world, Sarah. And you are mine, Sarah said softly. But we have to trust God on this the same way we trusted him when we first met. He brought us together, Jake. He will see us through this too. When Sarah went into labor on a warm May afternoon, Jake sent Tom racing for Dr. Harrison and Martha while he stayed with Sarah, holding her hand and trying not to panic. Martha arrived first, taking charge with calm efficiency, and Jake had never been more grateful for a friend in his life. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day, and Jake aged 10 years in those hours. He stayed by Sarah's side the whole time, letting her grip his hand hard enough to leave bruises, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement even when he felt terrified. Finally, as the sun was setting on that second day, a baby's cry filled the room and Dr. Harrison announced, "It is a boy, a healthy baby boy." Jake looked at Sarah, exhausted but radiant, as Martha placed the tiny bundle in her arms, his son. They had a son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing with impressive volume, already showing a strong set of lungs. "He is perfect," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Jake, look at him. He is perfect." Jake leaned over to get a better look at his son, feeling his heart expand in his chest. "He is beautiful, just like his mother. What should we name him?" "Thomas," Sarah said without hesitation. "Thomas James Irving, for your father and for you." "Thomas James Irving," Jake repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Thomas." The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder as Jake and Sarah adjusted to life with a newborn. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong, though he had powerful lungs and was not shy about using them when he was hungry or wet. Jake found himself completely besotted with his son, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, the way he would grip Jake's finger with surprising strength, the small sounds he made while sleeping. Sarah took to motherhood naturally, nursing Thomas and singing to him, somehow managing to keep the house running even while caring for a newborn. Jake tried to help as much as he could, taking over more of the household chores and hiring an additional ranch hand so he could spend more time close to the house. As summer turned to fall and Thomas grew from a newborn into a chubby, smiling baby, Jake reflected often on how much his life had changed in just over a year. He had gone from a lonely bachelor praying desperately in a chapel to a husband and father with everything he had ever wanted. Sometimes he would wake in the middle of the night, check on Thomas sleeping peacefully in his cradle, then return to bed and pull Sarah close, overcome with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked one night, sensing his wakefulness. "Just how blessed I am," Jake said. "A year ago, I could not have imagined this. You, Thomas, this life we have built, it seems almost too good to be true." "It is real," Sarah assured him, the same words he had once said to her. "This is our life, Jake. We get to keep it." By the time Thomas was 6 months old, they had settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah had started talking about the school she wanted to establish, and Jake had agreed to build a separate small building on the ranch property that could serve as a classroom. Several neighboring families had expressed interest in sending their children, especially through the winter months when ranch work slowed. They also discovered that Sarah was expecting again, this pregnancy coming as less of a surprise, but no less joyfully received. "Irish twins," Martha joked when she heard the news. "They will be close enough in age to be best friends." "Or worst enemies," Tom added with a laugh, earning a swat from his wife. The second baby, a girl they named Emma Grace, was born the following spring with far less drama than Thomas's arrival. Sarah's labor was shorter and easier, and Emma came into the world pink and perfect, with her mother's delicate features and her father's dark hair. "Now we have one of each," Jake said, cradling his daughter while Sarah nursed Thomas, who was toddling around getting into everything at just over a year old. "Our family is complete." "For now," Sarah said with a mysterious smile. "We have plenty of time for more if God sees fit to bless us with them," and blessed they were. Over the next 8 years, 3 more children joined the Irving family, another boy named Benjamin, then twin girls, Lucy and Hannah. The ranch house had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing family, and the schoolhouse Sarah had dreamed of was now a thriving reality, with not just their own children attending but a dozen others from neighboring ranches. Sarah had become a respected figure in Tropic, known for her kindness, her teaching, and her tireless work with the community church. No one remembered or cared anymore about the scandal that had brought her to Utah territory. She was simply Sarah Irving, Jake's wife, mother to 5 children, and a woman who had become integral to the community. Jake had expanded the ranch as well, now running nearly 500 head of cattle and breeding some of the best horses in southern Utah. He had been elected to the town council and was involved in plans to bring a railroad spur to Tropic, which would make it easier to get cattle to market. The lonely rancher who had prayed in a chapel for relief from his solitude was now a respected community leader with a full, rich life. One evening in the late summer of 1892, after the children had all been put to bed, Jake and Sarah sat on their porch watching yet another spectacular sunset. Sarah was 34 now, still beautiful but showing the marks of bearing 5 children and working hard for nearly a decade. Jake was 37, graying at the temples but still strong and vital. They had been married 9 years and Jake loved her more with each passing day. "You ever think about that first night in the chapel?" Jake asked, taking Sarah's hand. "When I saw you praying." "All the time," Sarah said. "I was praying for a miracle, for God to show me what to do, how to survive. And then you walked in." "I was praying for the same thing," Jake admitted. "For God to send me someone to ease the loneliness. I never imagined He would answer so completely." "I thank God for you every single day," Sarah said seriously. "You saved my life, Jake, not just by giving me a job and a home, but by loving me when I felt unlovable, by believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself. You gave me all of this." She gestured at the ranch spread out before them, at the house full of sleeping children behind them. "You gave me a family, a purpose, a future. Everything I have is because you were brave enough to approach me that night and offer me hope." "You saved me too," Jake said. "I was just existing before you came, not really living. You taught me how to laugh again, how to hope, how to love. Our children, this life, it is all because you were brave enough to accept my offer and take a chance on a lonely rancher." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the light fade from the sky. From inside the house came the sound of one of the twins crying, probably Hannah, who was prone to nightmares, and Sarah started to rise. Jake gently pushed her back down. "I will get her," he said. "You rest." Jake made his way upstairs to the children's rooms, which had been partitioned off under the eaves. Hannah was indeed awake, tears streaming down her 5-year-old face, and he scooped her up, holding her close. "Just a bad dream, sweetheart," he murmured, carrying her to the rocking chair by the window. "Papa is here. You are safe." Hannah snuggled into his chest, her tears already slowing. "I dreamed you went away and did not come back." "I am not going anywhere," Jake promised, rocking her gently. "I will always come back to you and your mama and your brothers and sisters. This is where I belong." "Tell me the story," Hannah demanded, as she often did. "About when you and Mama met." Jake smiled, settling into the familiar tale. "Well, once upon a time there was a lonely rancher who went to a chapel to pray. And in that chapel, he saw a beautiful lady praying too, and he knew right away that she was special. So he thanked God for bringing them together, and he asked her to marry him, and she said yes. And they lived happily ever after on a ranch with 5 wonderful children." "That is not exactly how it happened," Hannah pointed out, as she always did. "Close enough," Jake said, kissing the top of her head. "The important part is true. Mama and I found each other, and we built this family together. And we all lived happily ever after." Hannah was already asleep again, reassured by the familiar story and her father's steady heartbeat. Jake sat there for a while longer, holding his daughter, looking out the window at the dark shapes of the cliffs against the starry sky. This was his life now. This was his happily ever after. A house full of children, a wife he adored, a ranch that prospered, and a community that he belonged to. All because 9 years ago, he had walked into a chapel and seen a woman praying, and had recognized her as the answer to his own prayers. Jake carefully laid Hannah back in her bed, tucking the blanket around her, and made his way back downstairs. Sarah was still on the porch, and he sat down beside her, pulling her close. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Everything is perfect," Jake said. "Absolutely perfect." They sat together in the darkness, surrounded by everything they had built, blessed beyond measure, and grateful for the God who had brought them together in that little white chapel in Tropic all those years ago. Their story had begun with loneliness and prayer, but it had become a testament to faith, love, and the beautiful life that could be built when two people found each other at exactly the right moment. As the years continued to pass, the Irving family became one of the cornerstones of Tropic. Thomas grew into a serious, responsible young man who loved working with the cattle and seemed destined to take over the ranch someday. Emma was bright and curious, always asking questions and reading every book she could get her hands on. Benjamin had his father's quiet strength and his mother's gentle heart. The twins, Lucy and Hannah, were inseparable and utterly mischievous, keeping everyone on their toes. Jake and Sarah grew older together, their love deepening with each shared challenge and joy. When times were tough, during droughts or harsh winters, they supported each other and their community. When times were good, they celebrated together and gave thanks for their blessings. They never forgot where they had come from, the loneliness and desperation that had brought them together, and that memory made them appreciate what they had all the more. The story that had begun with a lonely rancher's prayer and a desperate woman's hope had become a legacy of love, family, and faith that would echo through generations. And every year on their wedding anniversary, Jake and Sarah would return to that little white chapel in Tropic, kneel together, and thank God for the miracle that had brought them together and given them a lifetime of happiness. Their happily ever after was not perfect, because no life is, but it was real and rich and full of love. And that was more than either of them had ever dared to dream possible on that evening, when Jake Irving first saw Sarah Greenfield praying in the chapel and recognized her as the answer to his prayers.